So this is their flower dew. It's organic potting soil for flowers. If you can tell right there is a picture of tulips for you guys. There's another picture of tulips as well. Okay, so this is just made for indoor and outdoor use. Just kind of regular, flower pot, black dirt. Alrighty, this is what we use, just regular old play sand, stuff you can buy at Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, that kind of thing. And then we have their organic high quality. This is the concentrate stuff right here, the dairy dew. Okay, this is the stuff that you got to mend your soil for. It's just straight cow manure. You don't have to use dairy dew as your recommended. If you prefer something else, go for it. If you want to use whatever compost you have in your own garden, that's totally up to you guys. The big thing we recommend is no clay, no peat moss, nothing that's going to hold or retain that moisture in your flower bed. Okay, these are going to be bad for tulips. We're trying to set you up for a better program. So this is where the mixture that we showed you beforehand, it's kind of the ideal recommended mixture. Your sand is going to filter out all that water. Your black dirt is going to have some kind of nutrient base, and then we put the cow manure in there to kind of add more nutrients to that sand base that you added in there, so they do have something to kind of blossom from. And getting into this, we're going to cut this into 3 different sections. So we're going to do 1 too deep, 1 just right, and then 1 too shallow. Okay, and then again we're going to cut that in half again, and we're going to put them tip up and tip down. Okay, so probably lengthwise we're going to do the top half, we're going to do tip up, probably the bottom half we'll do tip down. So you'll see that coming up here in a second. So we put chicken wire on the bottom of this. We're gonna put chicken wire on the top. You'll see that here, the finished product here in just a second. Everything moving forward, this is gonna be also critter proof. So if you've got moles, they're not gonna get it from the bottom. If you've got chipmunks, they're not gonna get it from the top. Squirrels as well, they won't get it from the top, and your tulips will be able to grow through it. I kind of went the cheaper route. I wanted a thicker chicken wire on the bottom to be able to hold in a lot of that black dirt and with the weed barrier so it wasn't falling through. So on the top, that's going to be way too tight. I wouldn't recommend that tight. So we're going to cut it up. So I have a bit of a confession to make. So this wasn't supposed to turn out as good as it did. This past winter, from when we planted these in these planter box up until now, the average temperature has been in the 30s. I think the lowest temperature was 27 degrees on average across the board from December when we planted these up until now. So with that being said, we didn't get the frost like we normally would in a given year. So on an average year, you would have your frost restrictions in your roads. This year, we didn't have any frost restrictions at all. So with that being said, this shouldn't look like this. It should be worse. Half of these should be dead, especially the ones on the outside edge. Anything 6 inches from the side, as you can tell, these ones are a little damaged and affected. Some of them look a little different than they should. Anything from the 6-inch mark should have been affected by frost pretty bad. These ones here, which are your shallow varieties, or shallow planted tulips and muscari, those should have all died off. This whole section right here should have been dead. Okay, this whole section here, I would have assumed probably would have done a little bit better maybe than the middle section, which is kind of recommended. But for sure, you're supposed to have some kind of damage 6 inches from the sides, because we didn't insulate this. We just put the right soil in here, got it going, and this is what it is. A happy mistake. So let's get into this. Now that I think about it, I take back a little bit about what I said. So if you lived in a warmer state, you got frost, maybe not as much as we do here in Michigan, but you get some frost to a degree, this is what you'd expect. If you get a little bit of frost, not a whole lot throughout the year, this would be a good option for you. Okay, normally in the northern states, they get frost a good amount of the winter. They get a good amount of snow throughout the winter. Normally these planter boxes just don't work. But if you live Tennessee, kind of ballpark there, where you get some frost and all that kind of stuff in the fall, in the fall all the way through the winter, this would be a better option. This is kind of what you'd expect. All right, here's an update for you guys. So obviously, right here is the dead center. You can tell everything that was planted tip up is doing pretty well, pretty on par across the board, pretty even. Everything that was planted tip down is doing a little behind, a little sporadic, a little inconsistent. So let's get into this. All right. So this one here is our problem child. So what that means is, not only was this planted tip down, but it was also planted shallow. So as you can tell, a lot of these haven't showed up. We got dead spots in here, dead spots in here. We got some muscari that's popping out. Got some muscari here that's still on the surface, hasn't done anything. These are all growing, looking all right. Back here, you got some muscari that's doing somewhat okay, but across the board it's pretty bare. So this is a pretty good example as to why you shouldn't plant them this shallow. This is what I expected everything back here to look like, but unfortunately this winter was pretty warm on average. I think our lowest temperature on average was 27 degrees, so that's really high or hot for us here in Holland, Michigan. So right here in the center section, We did everything as recommended. 6 inches deep for the tulips, 3 inches for the muscari. This one's a little more consistent compared to the last one. The only inconsistent spot is right here, where there's kind of a bare patch, versus the tip up part, which is all pretty consistent. All back here is all looking nice, all uniform. Little variations as far as how advanced some are. This one's still kind of in the bud phase, this one here as well, but across the board they're doing pretty good. These ones are a little behind because when it's planted tip down, it's going to take a little bit of time for it to grow and then circle back up. Now with that, you also have the inconsistencies of which side of the bulb it's going to start to grow from. So if they grow on the same side, so if you got one growing this way and another one growing this way, there'll be 2 of them right next to each other and have 2 barren spots on the sides. Whereas when they're planted tip up, they're all going to come into that nice uniform base, which is all going to be based on how they were planted. Alright, so in this section was the too deep, recommended, deeper than recommended. So right here is all your tip down, and then right here is all your tip up. Now if you could see it, we'll probably do another view, but for right here, there's probably about an inch variation, maybe 1.5 inches, between the recommended height and the too deep, while the big difference is right here. So when you get to tip down versus tip up, now if you were to blend these 2 beds together, you would have a little bit behind and some a little ahead. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. The only real thing is you got some of them here that are still pretty short yet, across the board. So that's what happens when you plant them too deep. They take a little bit longer to grow from the bottom and then shoot all the way back up. So you got to consider the bulb height as well. So when you plant them tip up, you've got the bulb, which may be 1 inch, 2 inches, for example. When you plant that, you're going to have the 1 inch, 2 inch difference from the bottom. So when you come from the bottom all the way up, it's going to be a huge variation as far as bloom time and speed versus those 2 varieties. So we'll keep par on this and see how this all develops. Now on a side note, the Dairy Dew that we used, I am so happy with how this turned out. So these tulip stems, I don't know if it's the exact variety that has these larger, thicker stems, or if it's just the Dairy Dew. But to give you an example, there's my pinky. Okay, pretty decent sized stem to these guys. Now to give you a better idea, here is a pen. So looking at that stalk is about the same width as my pen here.